Welcome to the latest edition of TAG Talks from the Acheson Group, TAG. I am your host, Lisa Lupo, and today I am talking about food defense with TAG's Director of Food Safety, Christopher Snabes. Good afternoon, Chris.
Good afternoon, everybody. How are you?
Doing just great. FDA is continuing to educate while they regulate the FSMA intentional adulteration rule. So some businesses are still not sure of its requirement. So Chris, how would you answer a food facility who asks, my facility has a food safety plan, but I'm now seeing references to FSMA requiring food defense plans. Is that something I need to have for my site?
Well, Lisa, that's a great question. We get that all the time. The intentional adulteration rule is pretty clear. It covers all foods that are FDA regulated. And it also includes foods that go a little bit beyond what we consider FSMA foods. So if you make an FDA regulated FSMA type food, say bread, and it also covers facilities such as seafood HACCP, juice HACCP, infant formula, bottled water, and dietary supplements. And those groups typically have never had to follow FSMA because they already had a sufficient food safety plans in place. The adulteration rule wraps them in as well. So if you have an FDA regulated food, you have to determine, do I need a food defense plan too? And it's pretty easy to do. First, you have to do what we call a vulnerability assessment. And that's where you take a look at each point, step, or process in your manufacturing if you have what we call a key activity type or an actionable process step. How do you do a vulnerability assessment? Well, you need to have training. And there's several types of training available. And there's 3 different types of vulnerability assessments you can conduct. Once you've completed the vulnerability assessment, and if you have determined that you either have a key activity type that's an actual process step or an actual process step directly through either the hybrid method or the 3-element method, then you have to have a fully written food defense plan, which requires another set of series of training. So do you have to ask yourself, do I need a food defense plan? First, you have to have some training to conduct the vulnerability assessment. Then you have to do the vulnerability assessment, and that'll tell you whether or not you need a written food defense plan. The other key aspects of that is if you do have what we call an actual process step, then there's required training for certain individuals that has to be conducted. And that's for each person who works at that actual process step and their immediate supervisor. So they're required to be trained on what to do in the event somebody tries to enter that work area who doesn't belong, and food defense in general, the general overview of the intentional adulteration. That's mandatory. Okay. So that's typically the real short version of whether or not you need a food defense plan. Do a vulnerability assessment first. If you do have an actual process step, then you write the food defense plan.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chris. So how then does the Acheson Group help facilities develop or assess or determine if they need a food defense plan?
Well, that's great. So we work with all kinds of food and beverage companies all the time from all over the world. Oh, by the way, this rule also includes those companies that export food to the U.S. They're FDA based. Okay. So not only just U.S. companies, but international companies as well have to have a FSMA-based intentional adulteration written food defense plan if they have an actual process step. TAG can help you in lots of different ways. Number one, training. So TAG is very fortunate that we actually have 2 individuals on staff, myself as well as Dr. Rolando Gonzalez, who are one of 52 people in the world that can teach the 3-element approach, which is a very elevated way to do a vulnerability assessment, much more accurate, and it can actually eliminate some of the steps that you would have to say, put a monitoring to, or find a way to put management components to. So we can help you with training. We can train you on general food defense awareness, as well as what we call the key activity type method. We can train you the mitigation strategies. Rolando and I can teach the 3-element approach directly to you. And we can also train the overall writing the food defense plan as a whole and mitigation strategy. We've done that for a lot of companies. Currently, we can do that online, virtually, August 31st this year, unless there's another extension. If we do get an extension, it would be because of COVID. But currently that ends on August 31st, and then it goes back to in-person training only. This is just for the 3-element approach. Other things that TAG has done for a lot of companies is when they're applying the 3-element approach, specifically, 2 of the 3 areas where they have to put a score or a number to an actual process step, they need assistance. And so TAG will go to the facility and actually help score to give you our opinion as to how the FDA would take a look at that, how they would score it, and help give you a written explanation to defend that score.
Okay.
3-element approach is pretty cool. It's the first approach, the first element is very objective. The second 2 elements are subjective. And that's where our expertise comes into play, and we can help you with that. So we've done that for quite a few companies. And the beauty of applying the 3-element approach versus, say, just a CAT method is you can actually reduce numerically and with scientific justification the number of steps that you have to apply mitigation strategy to. So we can help companies save time, save money, save expense, save paperwork. It's a really great approach. And we're very, very proud of the fact that we have 2 people on our team that could teach it, and proud of the fact that we've actually helped many, many companies reduce the amount of areas that they have to worry about. One key thing that I don't want people to forget, rule is different than any other FSMA rule. And the agency, FDA, understands that. So they're giving us more time to make sure that all food facilities fully implement it before they start regulating. We don't know when it's going to start to be regulated. They will be asking you if you have a food defense plan and some simple, quick questions when they come in for any other type of assessment, such as GMP assessment. They'll just ask you a couple of questions at the end. Do you have a food defense plan? What method did you use? So on and so forth. The other thing that's important to remember is this rule specifically addresses what we call the inside attacker. A lot of companies have had food defense plans since the events of 9/11, and they're worried about somebody breaking into a facility. This rule is different. This talks about what happens when somebody's already on the inside, say a contractor who has legitimate access or an employee who has legitimate access. How do you protect those points where a bad person could actually do something to harm mass amounts of people? That's what this rule centers on. The inside attacker and preventing mass attack using our food supply. It's a little bit different than the GFSI food defense ones. We see a lot of those don't necessarily consider the inside attacker. This rule specifically addresses the inside attacker.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Chris, for that in-depth information on the rule and its differences and what is required. And we really hope that today's TAG Talks discussion has provided our viewers with information that you need to know about the rule and the food defense plan, along with a tip or 2 on its implementation and what TAG can help you do. So you can view more TAG Talks on the Acheson Group YouTube webpage, which is www.youtube.com/the Acheson Group, all one word. And be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all things food safety and public health from TAG experts. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you everyone for listening.